We've got Angela Jones with us today, and I'd like for you all to give her a big, warm Fitchburg welcome. Okay, Angela?
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Yes. All right, perfect. So thank you so much for allowing me to spend some time with you today and share a little bit about the work that I am doing through United Way of Dane County. This is actually my second United Way that I have worked at. And so I tell people that I have grown up in the United Way system because between the United Way, United Way in Racine, where I was there for 10 years, and then I've been here now for 20 years. I've spent 30 years of my life growing up in the United Way system. And so I know quite a bit about United Way, how it functions. It is to me, kind of my dream job to be able to have. And so I am really pleased to be here with you today to talk about the work that I'm doing around financial security. But before I get started with all of that, I do want to share just a little bit with you about United Way of Dane County and United Way in general. So the area portfolio that I oversee is called financial security. I'll get into more details around that with you. And I'm at that age where I have to take my glasses on and off so you all can relate to that. But mostly what I want to be able to talk and share with you here is that United Way convenes people to bring individuals, our community, our agencies, all constituents together to be able to work on the issues that are most pressing to our community. And we can't do that without having the assistance of all of you. And so our United Way, particular United Way, is a very big organization through what we call United Way Worldwide, which is the overarching United Way that all of us are a part of. Our particular United Way has 40 different volunteer committees. So we are a volunteer-driven organization, and our staff is 64. That includes our loaned executives that come in and help us run our campaign, as well as our AmeriCorps members that are working in the schools to make sure that our kids have the educational foundation that they need and get tutoring if they need that. And then just some fast facts about United Way of Dane County. We were incorporated in 1992. As I mentioned, we are part of the United Way Worldwide Network, but we operate independently. Our dollars are invested locally here, so they are not going other places. So when you give us money, we're investing those dollars back in community programs and other things here in our community. We have a board of 38 members, we work with over 50 nonprofit organizations, and we have a lot of programs that we oversee in our community. Kind of a little bit of a fun fact about our United Way of Dane County is that we are the second largest United Way in the state of Wisconsin, where we all live. And we come in after Milwaukee, Waukesha, which you may or may not know, have joined together. So the two of them have come together. And we're 33 in all of the United Ways across the country by revenue. So I thought that was pretty nice. That means that we are getting people to donate and invest into the issues that are most pressing in our community. So I think that that's important to be able to note. Back in 2021, we held listening sessions to be able to develop what is now considered our strategic plan on a page. It is a 4 or 5 year plan of the priorities that we have for our organization. And as you can see here, the 4 priorities are impact, financial health, partnership, and engagement. A lot of the work that I am doing falls in that first category under impact, but there are things that I'm doing under partnership as well as engagement. And we had over 500 different listening sessions to be able to come up with this particular plan. And here I am sharing with you United Way's mission and vision our values, our idea statement, which I know is being challenged currently, but that still is extremely important to us, and we will continue to do that work. And then our positioning statement really is the power of caring, working for all. And now a little bit more into the area where I am. So you may recall that we used to talk about the collective impact work that we were doing as our agenda for change area, and a lot of people gave us feedback saying that that really didn't resonate with them, it didn't speak to them, they didn't know what that meant. So now we are talking about family well-being and community well-being. And so the work that I do falls under this area, really leading that collective impact through the systemic change. And we're doing that work through 3 different pillars. And it's the long-term work on systems change and multi-generational approach. We're modeling equity and anti-racist policies, as well as cultivating a stronger nonprofit ecosystem so that everybody in our agencies, as well as everyone else, can be strong in our community to carry out the needs that we have in our community. Up under our plan for community well-being, and again, this was developed from those 500 community sessions that we held, are our bodies of work. So we have our youth opportunity, and that's really focused on our early childhood and education work with the goal of helping young people realize their full potential. We have the healthy community, which is really focused on improving health and well-being for all. We have our community resiliency, addressing urgent needs today and advancing a better tomorrow. So things like our volunteer work that we're doing, our 211 system falls in there, and disaster response falls under that, as well as nonprofit capacity building. And then, of course, there's the area that I am overseeing, and that's our financial security area. And what I'm working on towards is building financial strategies to be able to strengthen families in our community. And I do have a focus on families just because of the children that are impacted. And so not so much on singles. However, there is some single work in my portfolio, but mostly on families, again, because of the children impacted. So my area includes housing, it includes homelessness, there's an adult reentry initiative for individuals who are returning to our community from prison, as well as our new body of work, which is Women in Wealth, and that is really trying to help break that generational cycle of poverty for women of color who have children in our community. So really helping them be able to get financially secure and again, break that generational poverty. So let me move more into the work that I am doing, and that's a passion of mine. I'm going to talk to you about what the challenges are, and then some just general overall data before I start talking more general about programs. And so within Dane County, how many of you know that housing is a challenge? Is that news to you, or do you know that? Yep, we all know that. We also have a rapid population and increased housing demand, and I'll give you an example of that. One of Epic, which we all love having Epic in our community, one of their strategies is not just to get that employee to be a part of their body of work, but since they know that they're only able to retain individuals for about 2 years, if they don't have a network or a system here or have quick access to be able to get to their safety net, their families, that they only stay for 2 years. So now they're recruiting not just that individual, but they want to include mom and dad or whoever makes up that system. And so that also is putting a strain on our housing demand. And we were already challenged, right? We know that families are seeing more financial strain. Coming out of COVID, where there's a lot of money in the community to be able to help, and a lot of that money is gone. It's not being replaced. A lot of families are seeing non-renewals, and we all know that we're seeing more eviction filings in our community, and we already knew that we had a low affordable housing stock, right? We all know that, right? And so what kind of that local impact is that I'm also part of what's called our Homeless Services Consortium. And so that's Dane County, United Way, the City of Madison, all coming together with our partner agencies to have a single point of entry for individuals and families who are experiencing homelessness. And so there's an assessment that is done to determine where you fall on a list of apartments that are available. And so from that assessment, we know that there are 498 individuals waiting to get the next housing available and 66 families. And this is as of January 1st. So a lot of people, a lot of demand for housing in our community. As well as Madison Metropolitan School District has identified over 1,000 students who are homeless, and so that does not even factor into HUD's definition of families or individuals that are literally homeless. So these families are mostly doubled up with other individuals. And then we know that Salvation Army has a waiting list right now, and about 43 families waiting to get into housing. So we have a lot of challenging things happening in our community, right? What I hear people wanting to know the most about is what does the eviction and judgments look like in our community? So here I'm sharing that data with you dating back to 2019. I'm a data geek, and so feel free to ask me questions that you have about any of this data. So you can see in the blue columns, evictions are definitely high, right? Eviction filings are definitely high. Let's just make that distinction. Filings are extremely high. In 2024, you saw that they were at 2,497. Some of this data is still being collected yet for 2024 court system grinds slowly. However, judges are aware of what's happening in the community, and so they've been extremely helpful in being able to keep our homeless population down. They actually only had 49 evictions. So of those 2,497 eviction filings that were held, only 49 were actually held over for judgment where the families were actually removed from their home. So we need to keep that in mind. I'm going to skip over this one. And so I think it's really important to stop and talk about evictions just for a little bit longer. So when you think about evictions, the numbers, the judgment numbers, what kind of pictures or images does that comes to mind when you think about that? What does eviction feel or look like for you? Anybody experienced an eviction and you'd be willing to share? When you think about eviction, what does it look like? What words come to your mind?
Homelessness.
Homelessness. Yep. What else?
Unemployed.
Unemployed. And what else might come to your mind? What about the eviction itself? What feelings might there be for that?
Sadness and anger. I think about all of your furniture and things sitting out on the sidewalk.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, exactly. So, this is a picture, and I use this picture in almost all of my presentations. And the reason I do that is because when I was talking to our case managers and we were having conversations about, non-renewals, and there's no really formal way to be able to track non-renewals, you have to rely on the participant or the tenant to tell you that they've received a non-renewal. One of our partner agencies said this, and I want to make sure that I read it directly as she said it. She was presenting, and someone asked that question about what does eviction look like, and she sat there for a moment, and then she said, an eviction looks like people's personal belongings and possessions in a garbage can and are on the curb for the whole world to see. It's humiliating, it's shaming, it's stressful. And so think about that. On top of the fact that you're challenged with being able to meet your financial needs, you may have just gotten laid off your job, you're already super, super stressed, and now you've got an eviction. The judge decides, yes, you're going to be evicted, and then all your stuff, all your belonging, your kids' toys, food that you had in the refrigerator, everything is on the street, on display for everybody to know your shame. That has stuck with me for so very, very long. It's something that I will never, ever forget. Just the pain in her face as she talked about it from her client's perspective. And then I later learned that she had experienced it too. And so what I feel is my job, and what I hope is you feel is your job, is how can we make sure that that doesn't happen anymore? That no more families have to have all their stuff, all their belonging, all their kids' toys out on the curb for the entire world to be able to see. With the core and ARPA funding going away, that made things very, very hard for folks. And so we want to be able to work together with all of you, with the entire community, to make sure that we are not doing that. We're also challenged, can I ask that questions wait till the end if you don't mind, because I might answer your question in my presentation. Thank you. Also want to keep in mind that we live in a community where we are constantly and continually to see the price of rent go up. How many of you are renting? How many of you are renters? Good number of you. How many have seen your rent go up over the last couple of months? Did it go up in both 2024 as well as 2025? Frustrating, isn't it? It's extremely frustrating. In Dane County, huh?
It goes up every year.
It goes up every year. Honestly, it does. And right now, Dane County is seeing about a 6.6% increase in rents year after year after year. We actually are second next to Hialeah, Florida, in terms of the rent increases that we're seeing in our community. So that's extreme. That's really, really hard on families. And honestly, a family would need to be making a wages of $30.38 per hour for the family, so combined income, to be able to afford the cost of food, housing, childcare, transportation, medicine, internet, etc. And so, let me just show you this. So this shows you the breakdown. So depending on your family size, whether you are two adults with one working with two kids or both working, you can see that the wages that you would need to earn to be able to afford living here and what size kind of apartments you would be able to need based on the size of your family. So if you look at that third line, we're at minimum wage. What's our minimum wage right now?
Minimum wage has dropped, though, David. Break in, but cost is only $7.07.
And it's been that way for an extremely long time. Very, very long time. Other states have increased their minimum wage to like $15 an hour, but someone earning only $7.25 an hour would need to have about 3 jobs to be able to afford rent in our community. And so we're talking about some really, really hard times. And I won't touch on, the political climate that we are currently in that also is exacerbating. So things are very, very hard, but there are some things that we are doing to try to help families overcome this. So in 2023, our board of directors approved our updated housing strategies after spending about a year working on those strategies to update them. And so he's getting some assistance for housing. We'll leave him. And so our housing strategies are case management. Can anybody tell me why case management might be important? Why might having case management be important to maintaining your housing?
If you're already homeless, you may not have an address for mail to go to or phone or whatever.
Yeah, actually,
But then also a case manager can help you with that financial planning. So what we found is during COVID, when, with all that money was in the community, however, the government wasn't willing to pay for a case manager or administrative assistance, right? So those families were on their own. Many of them went to the 18 months maximum getting the rental assistance, right? So what that said to a landlord is that you are now incapable after 18 months of continuing to pay your rent on your own because you've had to rely on the government to do it for the last 18 years. And so that's why we're seeing some folks have non-renewals, right? That's why we're seeing some of those eviction filings happening, right? And so if you have a case manager that can help work with you, keep your rent at the forefront and help you with any other type of issues or situations that you're having, you're going to be much more successful in being financial secure. So having a case manager is extremely important. Rapid rehousing, we want to make sure that we're increasing rapid rehousing. And rapid rehousing means You become homeless, we immediately get you into a housing situation and then wrap around all the other services that you need while you're stably housed. And that there gives you that stability. You know where you're going to be coming home to every night. Your kids know where they're going to come to. They know where they're going to get their food. And so we want to be able to increase that in our community. We also want to make sure that people who are getting rental assistance or financial coaching also have that case manager, because we know that is a three-pronged strategy that is extremely effective. And then we want to make sure that we're investing in BIPEC-led financial coaching, because sometimes people want to go and get advice and assistance from people who look like them. So we cannot leave the BIPOC community out and not invest in them for these strategies. And then, of course, as I mentioned with the Women in Wealth, wanting to make sure that we're expanding our home ownership, that there are pathways for families to be able to get into housing and home ownership if that is their desire and dream. And so I'm just going to give you an example of three different housing initiatives that are available in our community. Through our Rapid Rehousing program, we've been able to assist 670 families, and within those families, there were over 1,400 kids. And so that's great. We want to make sure that we're meeting those families. Family housing stability, we were able to serve 195 families. And so family housing stability is a housing program in which if you are living in your car, you can access, they will help you find housing and then work with you for 3 months to make sure that you're financially stable. And then reducing school mobility sounds just like it is. It is for families who have kids in school and they might be at risk of losing their home. And so we want to make sure that they're maintaining their housing stability so that the kids don't have to worry about going to a different school district or moving to a different school district. And so reducing school mobility has been able to help 971 families, impacting 2,600 children. So pretty big initiatives. And then I am not only just working with those agencies, and so through the Rapid Rehousing, through Family Housing Stability, Reducing School Mobility, these are all the agencies that are part of those collaborations, and it's important to have multiple strategies, multiple agencies working with families because they can touch the various communities throughout Dane County, so that's really important. But in addition to those bodies of work, I am also have invested in other programs, and through those other programs, we were able to help over 2,188 families, impacting about 3,000 kids. And so pretty big body of work. And then I want to share with you a success story of a family just so you can get a gist of the level of work that case managers are doing with families. And I'm going to read it to you directly, so I apologize for reading to you. So this success story is coming actually from our partner agency, Community Action Coalition, also known as CAC. How many people know what CAC is? Yep, a few of you, great. So Esmeralda just happens to live in Fitchburg. I didn't pick that just because I was going to be here today. It was in there before. She lives in Fitchburg, Wisconsin with her husband and 4 children, ranging in age 6 to 16. Her 10-year-old daughter, Sophia, has autism. Esmeralda said her husband needs to drive Sophia to school every day, causing him to consistently be late for work. That could be a problem. He eventually lost his job and the family fell behind on rent, received a 5-day eviction notice letter, and a court date letter for 2 weeks later. The situation was shocking to Esmeralda as her husband, as they had never been late with their rent before. So new families experiencing some new things and scary things. It was the first time they experienced this level of financial stress. The family was referred to our Reducing School Mobility program through the social worker at their young children's elementary school. They were connected to a bilingual case manager who could communicate with them in Spanish, that's very important, in their primary language. Their case manager arranged for this Reducing School Mobility program to pay the family's rent and get the eviction thrown out. Esmeralda's husband has since found a new job, and the family remains stable in their housing. Without help from the Reducing School Mobility program, Esmeralda said her family would likely be homeless today, and would need to rely on family members nearby for a place to stay. Preventing the family from having an eviction on their record was also a great benefit. As eviction becomes more common in Dane County's highly competitive rental market, landlords have the freedom to select their tenants. Consequently, landlords are more inclined to favor applicants without a history of eviction or recent homelessness over other people. By preventing evictions, we can disrupt this cycle. So tugs at your heart, huh? And so housing isn't the only thing that falls under my portfolio. You heard me talk about that a little bit earlier, so I'm going to run through these really quickly because I want to make sure I leave you plenty of time to be able to ask questions. And so you might know that United Way also has an affordable housing fund. And with that fund, it is a revolving loan, and it is for the last dollars in for development to be built. And so since 2018, we have invested $850,000 into 8 housing developments. And so we're helping to increase the affordable housing stock in the community. You might also know that United Way was instrumental in starting what is called the Dane Workforce Housing. And so the Dane Workforce Housing, of course, is focused on building more workforce housing in our community. And the difference between workforce housing and affordable housing is if you are in workforce housing, you can afford to spend a little bit more of your income on your rent, right, or for your mortgage. And so typically, they can afford to spend between 50 and 80% of their income on their rent. However, when we're talking about affordable housing, we of course want people to be at about 30%, but we will go up to about 40%. But mostly it's been 30%, and a lot of people actually really need to be more at like 20 or 25% to really be successful, given both, the wages that they are earning and the increasing rising costs just on housing, as well as everything else in our community. I want to touch briefly, too, on our Women in Wealth strategy. So again, this is focused on helping BIPOC women be able to break that generational poverty cycle. And so we are working with entrepreneurs to be able to give them the support that they need to be successful. For those who are interested in home ownership, making sure that they understand clearly what that means to own a home and make sure that they're really, truly prepared for a home. So there's a lot of training that they go through. But when they're in the home, we don't just desert them. So if an emergency comes up, we do have emergency funds that are available for them in home ownership. And then retirement security. That's really important. That really is more of a campaign around making people aware and educated on what are your options. So we're not saying that someone should not decide that they don't want to work and stay home and raise their kids and their children. You have the right to be able to do that, but just know that that does mean that you're not putting money away into Social Security or other things. And so how are you going to be prepared for retirement? And so just making sure that they're making an informed decision, whatever they decide to be able to do. Then we have our Hire initiative, which is really helping to make sure that individuals 18 and over have the educational foundation they need, as well as give them all the job training that they need to be able to find a job earning those higher wages, those $15 and $30 and $18 an hour jobs, so that they can provide for themselves and their families, as well as working with employers on the importance of having higher wages. And then we have our Journey Home initiative, which is our adult reentry initiative. This initiative has been around since 2009. The strategies are reset, so residency, employment support, education, and treatment. Sorry about that, had a little bit of a brain fart. And so since this initiative has been around, we have never had any of our Journey Home participants, we have never had more than 10% of the individuals who are in that program return to prison for parole violation or for committing a new crime. So it is a pretty successful initiative, and that is run by Just Dane, and they're doing a fabulous job of that work. So, and then maybe I'll just make this my last slide then. So in addition to everything else that I am doing, I saw a gap in the community where no one was really working with landlord and property managers to talk about how can we work collectively together to make sure that individuals and families are staying in their homes and not having to move or getting evicted or getting non-renewed. So I have formed what's called a Landlord Property Managers Committee, and for the last couple of years, we've been meeting with landlords, talking with them. We do have an engagement tomorrow, and the focus of that engagement is around mitigation funds. We're going to hear from 3 different communities about what that mitigation fund looks like in their community, and what could something look like here in this community. How many of you know what mitigation funds are? Nobody? So mitigation funds are when a tenant damages property, and landlords often will charge the tenant for it or try to figure out a different way. Mostly it's, going to the tenant for them to have to pay for. This fund would give take that pressure off of the tenants, but give the landlord some access to some funds to be able to make those repairs that are needed in the apartment. So we're going to be getting together, talking about what could that fund look like here in our community, because there is a line item in the governor's budget for mitigation funds that people really haven't been paying attention to, but it is there. And so how can we get it, use it, and then utilize it so more people can stay in their housing? And so I'll just end with that and turn it over to you guys. What questions do you have of me? Yes.
How many landlords and property managers are in this committee?
So it really varies. I would say the biggest one that we had about 50 landlords that were there, and that was the one that was focused on mental health. Because a lot of them say they can tell when tenants are having a behavioral or a mental health crisis, and rather than being punitive, they want to be helpful. And so they wanted to know how they can get their tenant or themselves connected with services. So we had a panel of experts in the community come and present and provide them with that information and give them access to the information. And so that was about the biggest one. I would say our smallest one was probably like 20 people. But we do have landlord and property managers also on the planning committee, and so that's been very helpful. And we do small mom and pops to the larger property manager companies as well. Other questions for me? Hey, Cheryl. Questions? Oh, yes.
You mentioned in your presentation,
Uh-huh.
one of the slides said BIPOC, B-I-P-O-C.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
That's a very good question. Let me go back to it. So it stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. Other questions? Yes.
Could you give more detail about the kind of work you do with agencies like Porch Light, the Road Home?
Yes. So we are constantly convening with them, talking with them, meeting with them, trying to better understand kind of what are some of the barriers that they might be facing to really be able to meet all the needs of families in the community. Hearing from the case managers, what are they hearing and seeing from their participants are huge needs. And then, of course, part of our fiduciary responsibility is making sure that they are meeting the outcomes that they said that they were going to meet in their proposal or application to us for funding. And so overseeing that and monitoring that, and if they're not meeting or they're far off, really helping to understand why they are that way. And I should say let me just move forward. For these 3 initiatives, we only have these initiatives in our community because United Way brought them to our community. So we wrote for grant opportunities to be able to bring these strategies to our community in Dane County. So that's some of the work that I'm doing. And then I'm always out in the community, like at places like this, to hear what people's needs are, where there might be an opportunity for United Way to fill in the gap of services, or where there is a pain point, where maybe it's just sitting down and having a conversation and figuring how we as a group, or, maybe it's 4 or 5 people, can overcome whatever the challenge it is. And so sometimes I'm a mediator. Sometimes, I'm also creating initiatives like the Women in Wealth. So really broad range of work that I'm doing in the community. And then I should say I sit on the Homeless Services Consortium. I also sit on the Community CDBG Committee. I'm on Bayview Foundation's board. I'm on another board. I'm part of the Homeless Services Book Club. And so I'm like really engaged in a lot of different areas. Most of my time, I'm spend a lot of time in meetings, just making sure that we're, all are on the same page, all oars are still rolling towards that same common goal. But a lot of times I am in the community just listening to hear, where are there gaps, and how then can United Way step in and fill that gap, like the landlord property manager engagement. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
A question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
On your slide about evictions, is there any data that relates to older adults, say 65 or older, that are being evicted? Can you talk to that?
They do not break data down that way, as well as the eviction and judgment data is not broken out by race, ethnicity either. So that information
So
is
there's
not
no-
available.
nothing on that? Okay.
No, sorry. Yeah, there's no formal,
Okay.
way that information is being collected. Yes.
What are all the different funding sources for United Way? I mean, I know they write a lot of grants and people donate a lot and everything, but do you get any federal funds, and are those being impacted?
Very, very little.
Okay.
Our dollars are mostly private dollars, and so we're not held to the same kind of scrutiny that some of the other agencies are that do get much more federal funding. We have 2 grants that are through the federal government. Otherwise, it is donor dollars and us writing grants on behalf of our partner agencies, or to bring new initiatives into our community. Yeah, so very, very little government funding. I would say like not even 1%. Yeah. Yeah.
So that, fund that you were, talking about, mitigated, that's what it is?
Oh, the mitigation funds? Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know if a tenant does a lot of damage, isn't there a limit or a cutoff, amount of money that they're going to provide to the landlords?
So we don't have a mitigation fund in our community currently, and so we don't know how we will set it up or what it will look like in our community. If you are interested in joining us tomorrow, please feel free, and if you want to bring that up. Or what I could do is, once we have kind of a draft of what we think the fund will look like for our community, maybe I could send that information to Janice, and she could get that back to you, and then you could provide some feedback.
I have a friend that has like $2,000 worth of damage for a flood he caused, and I want to be able to tell him maybe he can get some help from them.
So it would not be for the tenant. It would be for the landlord or property manager, not for the
But I think
tenant.
Wouldn't they give it to the landlord though?
So how I envision the fund is that we're not gonna pay 100%, but we will pay a percentage, but I don't know that to be for sure. It could be that they would pay the whole amount, or that they'll say, each unit has a maximum dollar amount. I'm not 100% sure. We're just gonna start the conversation tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, absolutely, but great question. Yes, ma'am.
I know that the Road Home has a program where they are working with families where the parents may have some kind of mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
And frequently, there is damage because of their illness. And the Road Home has been very good in terms of working with landlords, in terms of the landlord's understanding that this is not being done on purpose, but is caused by whatever problems these tenants may have. So.
Yeah, and I can say that we do have 3 Road Home staff that are on the planning committee, so they are a part of this, and we'll talk about that as well.
Good.
Yeah. We do engage our partner agencies in these conversations as well, because it's important to have their perspective, because they can often represent, what they're seeing, but then also from the participant perspective as well, which sometimes we're not always able to. But I do schedule meetings to meet with participants of the agencies as well. Try not to do it too often, because I don't want it to feel like I'm micromanaging them. Yeah. Other questions for me? Yes.
Collected a lot of money for United Way of Winnebago County.
Okay.
And I thought we were the baddest. I guess you were.
Well, we thank you for doing that. We would love for you to give to United Way of Dane County. But it's your money, so please spend it and give it to whom you feel you want to give it to. But thank you for giving to that other United Way.
Yeah.
Other questions for me?
I just wanted to say, we have some of the greatest case managers here. All of them. They are so wonderful. They help us with housing, utility bills and everything.
Yeah. That's what you want to have happen, right? That's what you want the families to have. And so that is part of what our case managers will be able to provide through the funding that we have. So if they are behind in utility bills, we can help with that. Oftentimes, it is, maybe it's not utility that they need, but maybe their kid doesn't have a bed or doesn't have a mattress. And so, we can be able to pay for those things as well, depending on which program it is. So it really is trying to meet the family where they are and really meeting those needs.
So let's give Angela another big hand. And was I right when I said you'll walk out of here knowing a lot more about United Way? Yeah, a lot of knowledge up here. And so, again, thank you so much for all that you've shared today. We really appreciate you.
Anytime. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, thank you.